السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل كما جاء في محكم التنزيل. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. It is incumbent upon us to recognize the standard of Allah's engagement with us. And that is, for the vast majority of human beings, for the vast majority of their lives, we are filled with blessings. We are filled with comfort. We are filled with safety, food, clothing, and shelter, and good health. And the exception to that blessing and that favor is to remind us that we are not in heaven. This isn't the place where we relax and have fun and enjoy ourselves for eternity. We are in a place where people have free will, and we are tested and responsible for how we chose to treat the gift of life. So as those who affirm faith, we are responsible to become thankful servants, to become grateful, and to show our gratitude in a conviction and lifestyle of commitment to the revelation that was revealed to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we ask Allah to bless him in the eternal favor of his mercy and fill him and shower him with blessings, and that may all of us who follow him receive the mercy of the eternal bliss, having followed the beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After watching 4 months of a live genocide, it's very easy to get down on ourselves, to be overcome by negativity. It has now been recently established in the last week that the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Jordan have agreed with Israel that they will then use the port and use the land so that they can bring in all of the shipments to Israel through that land in order to bypass the Houthis in Yemen who have successfully, effectively blockaded Israel's shipments. That lets you down because we tend to want to focus and say, oh, it's all America, oh, it's all Israel. No. This wouldn't have lasted at all had one of those countries started to throw down in the field of battle. Just one. Whether it be Egypt, Saudi, UAE, any one of them. Had one started to fight back, there would have been a quick diplomatic solution. After the widespread destruction of Gaza, we have now witnessed, The Guardian has done a very brilliant job of showing the absolute destruction of so much of the infrastructure. And the obvious point, as we saw many videos of actual soldiers saying, watch, and then they blow up universities and mosques and whole entire neighborhoods of homes. And yet now, it has been confirmed, it is happening, you can see it, the video, the people inside Egypt have confirmed that they are building a refugee encampment, an 8-mile walled barricade on the Sinai side of the border with Gaza. Basically, they are now going to go ahead and participate in the ethnic cleansing as Egypt. With all this, how do you keep a positive mindset? لا يسأم الإنسان من دعاء الخير. A human being is generally inclined to pray for good things to happen, to get wealth, to get well-being. It's natural for all of us. And then while we're praying, we see many وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ فَيَئُوسٌ قَنُوطٌ. And while praying and hoping for all of these good things, now some terrible affliction happens to someone and then they become hopeless. They become fully embracing pessimism. This is all, it's useless. This is what is religion and God and all of that. This is not fair. وَمَن يَقْنَطُ مِن رَحْمَةِ رَبِّهِ إِلَّا الضَّالُونَ. Those who are hopeless of the mercy of their Lord are astray, misguided people. So optimism, what is the Islamic position on optimism? What is the prophetic legacy of optimism? It's an Arabic word, tafa'ul. Tafa'ul means to have an open mind and heart to expect good things to happen, to have good assumptions of what is going on, to have a good attitude and to speak good about things that are happening. And tafa'ul is especially more than just simply hopeful or positive in reaction to negative things. When things are appearing negative or bad or hard, to react with positivity to that is the essence of optimism. Adi ibn Hatim was one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ one day and a man came and he complained of poverty. And the Prophet ﷺ advised him and helped him. And then later on in the same day, a man came and complained, I went on my business trip and then the bandits, the hijackers, qita' al-tariq, they came and robbed us and now I have nothing. And so that man went. And so Adi is just looking going, man, this is terrible, And then the Prophet ﷺ said, listen, Adi, you will live long enough and see a time when a woman can travel from Persia on her camel and she comes all the way to Mecca and she doesn't have anything to fear and no harm will come to her. And you will live long enough to see a time when a man will hold in his hand a stack of gold pieces and he will go to people saying, does anybody need this? And everybody will be like, we're good. And in fact, Adi lived to see both of those realities. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ told him this, it seemed ridiculously optimistic. Any person would say that, but he is the Prophet ﷺ. Now the question is, and I want to be very clear about this. Some would say, well, Allah told him, so he has a reason. I'm not sure that's true. Actually, we have no evidence to believe that. What the Prophet ﷺ does know is that this message will reach the corners of the earth. He has been told that this message is the final message sent to humanity. Does he know the exact intricacies of what Persia will happen to Persia, and will that be in the lifetime of Adi? Does he know that there will be a time? No, it happened. Adi ibn Abi Hatim was part of the army that took Persia out, and there came a time under Umar's rule in that time when the concept of qita'u tariq was pretty much completely gone. There was no more banditry. That was abrogated by Islam's presence, by Islam's rule. And then similarly, under Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, there was a time when they had no one to give zakat to because of the economic system of the Muslim world had developed into such maturity that everybody felt that they had all of the necessities and they were comfortable financially in the entire nation. So the Prophet ﷺ is using what he knows, what he expects should happen. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا عدوى ولا طيرا ويعجبني الفأل أحب الفأل الصالح. Prophet ﷺ said, you shouldn't be superstitious in bad omens. You shouldn't say, oh, look what happened. Oh, that's because this, and this. Because these people control the world. Or because of black magic. Or because of evil eyes. Or because of. When you have no real knowledge of that. You're just having a negative attribution. This is adwa. Assuming terrible things without knowledge. Tayra is just pessimism. It's not going to work out. Will not happen. The Prophet ﷺ said, that should not happen. This type of prohibition, لا عدوى ولا طيرة, is different from لا تفعل, don't do such behavior. He's saying nobody should think like that. It should never be that we embrace the idea of bad omens or the suspicion that terrible forces have so much abilities. You go back to Allah who has the final say, and you know who He is and who you are to Him and who you are to the believers, and you work and live accordingly. The Prophet ﷺ said, I love it when people are optimistic. It impresses me. I feel uplifted when people say positive things. There is no doubt that good things are going to come out of this genocide. There should be no doubt in your mind. And you should live and talk and act accordingly. Depression is not an acceptable choice for a believer. Now, we're not talking about mental illness. That's a whole other thing when someone has gone through some trauma and it becomes clinical. We're talking about the spiritual means to prevent those things from becoming as such. That a believer should be focusing on the big picture. When it comes to the issue of someone being killed for just being a believer and standing for their rights, martyrdom, يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ. The people who are dying and those around them as martyrs, they're happy. يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. They're like, these people are going to heaven. These people have been relieved of all of the tyranny of this world, and they were able to use their life as an example of standing up for truth and justice and freedom. This is a beautiful thing. They have the biggest blessing waiting for them. What a beautiful ending. That is the Quranic model. After the Hudaybiyah, where the Muslims were going to go make their pilgrimage, and they were held siege by the warriors Khalid ibn Walid and the company of Mecca for a long time. It was like a week. And they didn't know what was going to happen. Were they going to be massacred? What was going to happen? They ran out of water. The Prophet ﷺ was blessed with a miracle to multiply the water. And so in that situation, after they weren't allowed to make their their pilgrimage, and after they weren't able to gain a fair footing in the peace treaty, the peace treaty very much favored the Meccan Quraysh over the Muslims. And the Prophet agreed to that. And people were concerned about that. The companions were very much upset. And so then after that, Allah revealed the ayah about that situation. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. So the consensus of Muslim scholars said this is what it is. Some rare people tried to understand this as conquest of Mecca, but the overwhelming hadith evidence tells us that God said, we have truly opened a beautiful door that will lead to your empowerment in a very clear way with this, which looked like a very bad settlement and a very bad situation for the Muslims who had just recently been blessed with divine miraculous intervention to be saved from 10,000 warriors of Ahzab. It doesn't look good for them, but Allah's telling them. And that's how they reacted to it. In the context of divorce, divorce is not something that in a disagreement or some conflict of personality or whatever that you would start thinking of divorce. Divorce has to be something like, there's some major problem, there's major, dislike and hatred and, people doing major sins and abuse and all of those things. But in that context, Allah said there needs to be a divorce to find a way to deal with this. Is it best to just move on and separate and divorce? Or is there a solution that now the seriousness of this divorce makes us think about it? We call it talaq raj'iyya. There's a 3-month period where you have to figure it out. So then Allah said, لا تدري لعل الله يحدث بعد ذلك أمرا. You don't know. You're thinking, divorce, what is this? The families and how everybody will think and all of that. Nowadays with the culture and so forth. Because the companions, many of them got divorced. The Prophet ﷺ divorced 2 of his wives in his life. And so he's telling us, you don't know. Maybe this will move you to find a solution to your problem and move on. Because that 3 months is like, we better figure it out. Otherwise, that's the end of this relationship. Or you come to terms with, we're not compatible. There's some serious conflicts and problems. We've tried for this so much, it's best to move on. And then we find better people to live better lives with each other. See it as a positive thing. The foundation of optimism is in knowing Allah and having a good assumption of Him. As the Prophet ﷺ said, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي إِنْ ظَنَّ خَيْرًا فَلَهُ وَإِنْ ظَنَّ شَرًّا فَلَهُ. I am as my servant assumes about me. Whatever you think about Allah, who He is to you, how He is to you, what He will be to you, then you will have that. If you think negative things, if you think bad things, you're going to get that. If you think good things and positive things, you will have that. The Quran, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. You will think something's bad, something terrible is happening and all that, but there's something good in it for you. Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said, the difference between optimism and pessimism is that optimism is rooted in a good assumption of Allah. And pessimism is rooted in a bad assumption of Allah. May Allah bless us with the proper insight and love of Him and a knowledge of Him and recognize the beauty that He is to everything that we are. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Imam al-Mawardi, one of the great scholars of our history, he said, optimism strengthens one's resolve. It moves one to work hard towards his or her goals. It helps people on the path to success. I believe good things will happen. I am doing things to the best of my ability, seeking the favor of God, keeping proper ethics and morals. I'm going to work to the best of my ability, knowing the best will come. In the modern self-help world, they call this the law of attraction. What many researchers found out is that in world history, believer or not believer, that those people who achieved the greatest achievements in human history, they were practicing the law of attraction, meaning they kept imagining and envisioning good, positive things, that their work would come to fruition, and they knew and they believed it was going to happen. And then it happened. If you focus positive thoughts and you believe that good things will happen, you attract positive experiences. A lesson from the story of Prophet Joseph, peace and blessings be upon him, it tells us to be careful even when you pray. Don't limit Allah. Because Yusuf alayhi salam, he was praying and complaining to Allah that he's been in the jail for so long. And then Allah responded to him saying, Joseph, you imprisoned yourself because you prayed, Rabbi sijnu ahabbu ilayya. That, oh my Lord, I am rather to go to prison than do what these women are calling me to. He said, had you have just prayed, Rabbi al-afiyatu ahabbu ilayya, oh Allah, just take me out of all of this and save me from all of these problems, then I would not have let you go to the prison. But you were assuming it's either this or prison. You limited the possibilities. People are gravitated towards positivity. It brings a sense of comfort and ease. There's a psychosomatic element to it. They have done lots of neurological studies about dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. People who think positively, people who are content with life, people who are around others that are being positive and smiling at them and saying good words, they start to feel better and more comfortable by being around that. All the great leaders' stories and success, we see that. They stayed the course no matter how bad things got. They never gave up or became hopeless or depressed or down on the situation. The Prophet ﷺ was the best example of this. Again, the Prophet ﷺ knows that the Quran is not complete, the message is not ready. So when he's making his hijrah, does he just say, let's just walk and Allah's with us? No, he strategized. He said, okay, Abu Bakr, we're going to use this guy and we're going to go in the complete different direction. We're going to stay hiding in